Hi. You're on Short Retelling, and this is the movie Cruzando el limite. A father exiles his disobedient son to a special boarding school, a torture center where they teach him to control his aggression. The movie, based on a true story, begins with the main character, teenage Fran, has a conversation with his best friend and girlfriend via video chat. He is drinking a beer in front of his computer and smoking. Suddenly, his father Louis enters the room. He has to get up early, and the loud noise is keeping him awake. The teenager snapped rudely at the old man to get out of the room, but the father won't leave. He tries to talk to his son while his friends wait patiently. In the morning, a sleep-deprived and irritable Louise goes to work to run the store. Meanwhile, the lobotrious son is having a good time. Scored on the school, he smokes with his friends, listens to music, drinks, and making out with a girl. Later, his father gets word that Fran has long since dropped out, and then gets a call from the hospital to pick up his kid because he got into a fight. The man has to go to the emergency room, where the parents of Migu, a friend of Fran's. The parents of Migu's are waiting for him. They speak out in the vein that Fran is a bad influence on their child. After waiting for the end of the examination, Luis takes his son away. He tries to talk to him on the way home, but in the underground garage, he breaks down and wants to leave. The man catches up with his son, but the teenager yells at him and punches him in the face before running away. When Luis comes home that evening, his son is gone. He's gone to the disco to party with his friends, dancing, drinking, and snorting illegal substances. The father lights the candles on the birthday cake alone for his son's 17th birthday. Worried that he can't find a common language with his child, Luis searches the internet for ways to connect with teens. He comes across an ad for a program called Simca's Psychological Treatment for Aggressive Behavior. Parents of troubled teens share their experiences. They had a hard time communicating with their kids before and how easy it became afterward. While watching the videos, Louis does not notice how time flies, and at night drunken Fran wanders, staggering along corridor. The boy freezes at the ajar door to his father's room, but he turns out the light to avoid another unpleasant conversation. The next day Louise goes to the Simca presentation. The imposing coach gives a rousing speech about how discipline can help instill real values and purpose for a successful business. While he listens to the speech, his son is on his cell phone drinking alcohol. Migu, at the instigation of his mother, denies friend, and the girl hints that there is nothing serious. They were not, so it is useless to build far-reaching plans. Frustrated, Fran continues to pour grief. Precisely this is how his father finds him in the evening. During the night, two specially trained men drag the half-naked teenager out of the bedroom. He fights back, kicking and screaming and calling for his father, but Luis has already prepared a suitcase with his belongings, and he walks his son. The boy is thrown into a minivan and driven down a scenic serpentine road away from the city. There he is met by Father Oscar, the main of the educators. The man is unhappy that the barefoot and half-naked newcomer, the pupils must be disciplined and come in with clothes on. He also doesn't like the handcuffs on the teenager, so Oscar tells to take them off. Fran takes this gesture as a friendly gesture and calls the guard names. But the educator instantly re-establishes the social hierarchy. He twists the insolent kid's arm, shoves him and reads out the ground rules, which include silence in the presence of the elders. The right to speak is a privilege. Fran gets a haircut, is given a uniform and taken to the rest of the group. The kids with bloody marks on their chins are watching the daily video. They greet the new kid with a rehearsed chant. When Fran tries to talk to a neighbor, Father Oscar presses a pause, and the kids jump up and down, reciting the rule of silence. Discouraged by such coherence, the hero looks dejectedly at parties, realizing that they will not joke with him here. Further routine includes strictly regulated useful labor for the good of the community, collecting clothespins and group lunches in the canteen. Fran looks around at her new comrades, trying to memorize the obligatory shoutouts. There is an advertisement on TV in which psychologists hammering into the head theses about acceptable behavior. Nando's father also stands out among the educators. Oscar reprimands him for his appearance and gum for setting a bad example for the kids. The teenagers also talk to a psychologist who questions them not only about their secret fears, but also about their relationship with their parents. Fran admits that he misses his father, but he's saddened by the fact that Louis never really showed any fatherly love, including for his mother, who left the family when he was young. The teaching staff at the boarding school, led by Oscar, are discussing the upcoming Freedom Day, a kind of holiday for the students to show them what life outside the institution, their lives outside the institution. Nando, as a newcomer, doesn't know what it is, and he is lightly jeered at by his colleagues, to which he responds with a pathetic speech. Later, during lunch, Nando takes out his anger on one of the students, beating his face against the table while the rest of the children hurriedly eat, pretending that nothing is happening. In the course of the educational process, Nando gets carried away and pours pepper gas into the child's eyes. The director of the boarding school doesn't like it. Rich parents don't pay money to have their children mutilated. Oscar manages to hush up the case with a light reprimand subordinate with a fixing blow to the face on the table. Soon Fran successfully memorizes the rules. But he's not yet familiar with the punishments, so one day, after lights out, he sneaks out of the room. Unnoticed by the guards, he makes his way down to the floor below, where he finds a sensory deprivation unit, complete or partial isolation from the outside world, where even simple conversations is forbidden. In one of the rooms, the hero sees a teenager tied to a gurney, his eyes and ears covered, left alone with his thoughts. Fran takes off his mask and headphones, and the poor guy screams at him to kill him out of mercy. Frightened by this reaction, Fran runs back, but the guards spot the escape from the bedroom. An alarm is raised, the hunt for him begins. The hero hides in a corner, and when the guard enters, he lunges at him and beats him into a bloody mess until the help twisted him. For this act, Father Oscar sentences the whole group to be punished by putting the children face down on the floor with their chins. While they lie motionless, the wardens occasionally turn on lights and loud music, a situation reminiscent of an epilepsy-inducing episode of Pokemon. After serving her sentence, Fran gets her bloody mark on her chin. At the same time, the children's parents gather for their own rehabilitation program led by psychologist Hillian. Louis tells them that he can't connect with his son, to which the doctor responds that dialogue is an engagement of both parties. So not only do children have to learn obedience, but it's also the parents' responsibility to be involved in their lives. As a successful example, Hillian cites Sandra and her parents. The girl graduated from the program. The adults talk about how their lives have changed since their daughter's return, but the story ends with the girl peeing her pants and her mother taking her away. Back at home, Louis, as the counselor advised, he goes into his son's room. On his computer, he watches a music video in which his son fooling around with his friends. Louis himself appears in the footage, as the kid secretly filmed it at work. The video makes his father smile, and the next morning he goes to the boarding school to pick up his son. But Oscar shows him the video of the guard beating him up and convinces him that Fran is not yet ready to adapt in society. While watching another video, the young man makes a joke, which is overheard by the caretakers. The group is led to another punishment for not paying attention to the repetitive talking points. Will have to spend more than 24 hours on their feet with their hands tied. Only the one who lasts the longest will pass the test, the rest will be sent to the sensory isolation unit. Those who squat are let out by guards. At the same time, the parents go through another training session for understanding. This is where Luis gets to know Sandra's parents are worried about their daughter's mental health, but they're hoping that the training will help. The next day, the remaining teenagers are fed, but one less portion than the prisoners. Unable to reach an agreement, the children argue and the guards take away all their food. Toward night, when the second day begins, Hillian comes to the cage, a woman videotaping the kids to gather evidence of the cruelty being practiced at the orphanage at the boarding school. Nando catches her and takes her to Oscar, but the supervisor doesn't see anything wrong with leaking the data. All of the methods are legal. On the third day, Fran is the last one left standing on his feet and goes back to living a normal life on schedule. Meanwhile, Louis develops a warm relationship with Sandra's mother. They have dinner together and their acquaintance develops into a romantic interest. But as she kisses Louis in the parking lot, her daughter is watching Helena's videos torture. Unable to bear the memories of the experience, the girl throws herself off the roof, right in front of her father. The director reprimands Oscar for leaking information. This leads to a tightening of the rules and regime at the boarding school. The students are literally forced to exercise, some vomit in the gym. Nando makes the offenders to clean up the vomit with his bare hands. He also continues to practice beatings with the acquiescence of the rest of the faculty. All of this leads to the fact that at a certain point Fran rebels, he freezes in place and won't leave the cafeteria. Oscar tells to take him to the sensory isolation room where they tie him up and cover his eyes and ears. After a while, the lack of information from the outside the brain starts to create hallucinations, images conjured up from the past. The torture ends when Freedom Day comes. Men's and women's groups gather in the gymnasium to dance the waltz. An exhausted Fran is brought in, but he doesn't participate, but watches from the sidelines, sitting in a chair. The pupils, divided into pairs, waltz on command, but one of the boys, looking at Fran, who has the courage of Fran's open rebellion, he freezes. The others follow suit, despite shouts and blows from Father Oscar. The event is thwarted by Fran's smirk of satisfaction. Nando even had to twist his boss around before he hurt anyone in his hysterics. Luis admits he wants to take his son out of boarding school, and the woman says it's the right thing to do after what they've done to her daughter's psyche. The next day, the man arrives at the boarding school. Fran is taken out immediately, without even trying to dissuade the father. The teenager silently gets into the car without even saying hello to Luis, staring blankly out the window on the way home. At home, he meets with a girlfriend, asking how she is doing. He does not cover his adventures in the boarding school, only regrets that there are still left in the dungeons there are a lot of children. Fran won't talk to her father, but he's stopped being rude, too. The boy gets rid of the memorabilia from his room, thus severing the connection to his past I. He doesn't accept gifts from his father, and in his spare time yelling out the window into the rainy emptiness of the big city. But one day, standing in the kitchen, he reflexively repeats the boarding school chant, which provokes a dialogue. Fran accuses his father of deliberately handing him over to sadistic torturers. Luis argues that he was deceived, then recites a monologue, confessing to his son that it's not easy for him alone after his mother abandoned them, deeming both of them unwanted. And it's hard for the man to admit it, and the son makes it worse by blaming his father. In the next scene, they drive in silence in a car to a house. Luis gets out to give the owners his papers. We can't see who it's for. As they pull away, Fran asks if it was Mom. Instead of answering, his father gets out of the car and walks in the rain and walks away. His son catches up with him and they stand together, hugging and hiding their tears in the rain. That's all for now. Subscribe to the channel and leave your opinion in the comments. All the best.